Hi there, welcome to this lecture series on matrix algebra. Today we cover lecture number 9, part 1. In this lecture we will talk about vector space. We will go through various related topics, starting from definitions and properties, and we'll give examples, and we'll talk about special elements in the space like the zero element. And then in the second half of the lecture, we'll go through subspaces and with examples and concepts of intersections and unions, so on and so forth. Okay, so let's get started. So first, a definition for the vector space. What is a vector space? A vector space is a set, let's call it V, for V is from vector. So in this set, the elements in there can do the following. One is added to each other and it's still in the set. Second is multiply by a real number and it's still in the space. So basically it says the elements in the space can perform addition and multiplication, but multiplication is just with a real number. So for these two operations, we will also require the usual properties associated with them, so such as commutative, associative, and distributive property of sums and products. Okay, let's look at the details. Now let's take boldface U and V and W just to denote three elements in the vector space. And let's take C and C prime to be two real numbers. And then we'll have the following properties, which we shall be familiar with addition and multiplication. Okay, so U plus V equal V plus U. And then the second, U plus V in bracket plus W would equal to U plus and V plus W in the bracket. So you can do this addition first, or you can do this addition first, and then the sum of these three is the same no matter in which order you add them up. Okay, and the next is a distributive property for scalar multiples. So you put a C outside the bracket of U plus V, and this equal to CU plus CV. You can distribute the C onto each element. And similarly, if you are adding up C and C prime, two numbers, and then multiply with the element in the V, then you can distribute the element with each of these scalars. So you can have CU plus C prime U. Okay, and there are other similar properties associated with sums and products. They also hold here. Now let's take some examples of vector spaces. The first example would be to fit its name, let's consider all vectors in the plane. So this is a vector x with two elements x1 and x2. It's a two-dimensional plane. And then let now y with element y1 and y2 be also in the same plane. So let's check. If I add up two elements, and then you can perform the vector addition, then you will have x1 plus y1 in the first element, x2 plus y2 in the second element. And then you see that this is, again, a vector in the plane. Okay? The second property is if you multiply a vector x by a number c, and you get another vector, you will distribute the C onto each element. And this is again a vector in the plane. And therefore, the set of all vectors in the plane, they form a vector space. Let's look at a couple more examples. The next one will be the set of all 2 by 2 matrices. And you can easily verify that if you have A and B, they are both 2 by 2 matrices, and then the sum A plus B is a 2 by 2 matrix, and also the product A times a constant C is also a 2 by 2 matrix. And then you might have noticed that in this discussion, the 2 by 2, this dimension is not restrictive. We can look at, for example, a 3 times 5 matrix and look at the set of all 3 by 5 matrices. And then the same claim would hold, because then the 2 matrices A and B, they will have the same dimension, then you can add them up, and then the scalar product is also well defined and resulting in a matrix of the same size. Now let's go a bit broader. Vector spaces and doesn't have to be restricted to a vector. The space now V of all continuous function f from real number to real number from R to R is also a vector space. We can verify the properties. So let's say we have 2 functions f and g. They're in the space V, meaning that these are continuous functions. Then I can sum up the 2 functions, so f plus g of x would be simply f of x plus g of x. And then if you add up 2 continuous functions, the resulting function is continuous. Secondly, the product c times f is simply taking the function f and multiply it by a number c. And the resulting function is still a continuous function. Okay, so in this connection, we can put in many examples with different functions. Let's say I have fx is this function, x plus sine square x, which is a continuous function. And I get a g here, which is 3 plus cosine square x. That's also a continuous function. Let's take a real number c, just to be 5. Okay, so what is f plus g? Adding the 2 functions. Well, that is simply taking the function f and then add the function g. Okay, so if you add these 2 up, well, you notice there's identity, sine square plus cosine square, which is 1, and then add 1 on top of 3, you get 4. And then you have the remaining x. So it's x plus 4. And we see that's, again, a continuous function. And then you can take a function f here, for example, and multiply by our number c, which is 5. So what is 5f? Well, that is just taking the function f, which is here, f of x, and multiply it by 5. And then you can distribute the 5 onto each term, and you will get 5x plus 5 times sine square x. And this is a continuous function. And we can look at specific types of functions. In particular, the set of all polynomials, we call it P for polynomials. And we are not restricting the degree, so any degree. Okay, so for example, if I have a polynomial that is of degree 2, so x plus 1 square, and then I have another polynomial q, which is first degree, x minus 1, and let's take a constant c to be 3. So what is p plus q? Well, p plus q will be this p here, which we expanded, plus the q here, which we put down. So we can collect like terms and simplify. So negative 1 cancels the positive 1, 2x and x makes 3x, and we get this. And we see that's a polynomial of degree 2, which is in the set P. Okay. And then if you take any polynomial, let's say we take the P, which is in our set, and multiply by a scalar number, let's say, okay, so here we put 5, although I write 3, so this should be 5. But okay, it's a number. The idea is the same. And then you multiply 5 onto the function defined as in P, and then you get that, and then you distribute the 5 onto each term, and you see again you have a polynomial. Okay, so we can also talk about polynomials, and we restrict the degree. Let's say we call P2, this is the set of all polynomials of degree less than or equal to 2, meaning all polynomials which can be written as follows. So P of x is a2x squared plus a1x plus a0. And these a1 and a0, a1, a2 are just 3 scalar numbers. Then it's easy to see if you add up 2 polynomials of this type, and you would end up in a polynomial of degree less than or equal to 2. And if you multiply this by a scalar number, you are still having a polynomial of degree less than or equal to 2. The next example is a special type of matrix. Let's consider the set S of a 2x2 or 2x2 symmetric matrices. So it's easy to see that the sum, okay, we'll actually show that. Okay, so the sum of 2 symmetric matrices A and B, so A plus B will become symmetric because we want the sum to stay in the space. Okay, and a multiple, scalar multiple like that will also result in a symmetric matrix. Let's look at the proof. Well, the proof would be that, assuming that, so the first one is to see A plus B is symmetric. So if A is symmetric, then A equals A transpose, and then B equal to B transpose, and B are symmetric. And we want to prove that A plus B is symmetric, that is A plus B equal to A plus B transpose. Then, thanks to the property of the transposition, we'll have the following. A plus B, the sum of this transpose, simply equal to the transpose on each and then add up. So A transpose plus B transpose. And since A and B are both symmetric, then this is just A and this is just B. And that's what we wanted to prove. And then we also need to prove that scalar multiples of a matrix that's symmetric result in a symmetric matrix. So CA transpose equal to CA. Okay. Again, we use the property of the transposition. We can show that C times A transpose would be, because this is a scalar multiple, we can just move it out. It will be C times A transpose. And then A transpose is just A. So we just have CA. Okay. Now let's take some examples of sets that is not a vector space. Okay. So the first example will be the set M of all matrices of all sizes. So any matrix will be in this set. Can this be a vector space? Well, no, it can't, because for this to be a vector space, we shall be able to add up any 2 elements of it. So we can take, for example, a 2x2 matrix, which will be in the set M, and then a 3x4 matrix will be in the set M. But I cannot perform an addition of these 2. Therefore, this is not a vector space. Now, how about the set of all integer numbers, Z? Is this a vector space? Well, if you check the sum, if you have 2 different integers, you add them up, you get another integer. But then this fails the second condition. The second condition is if you take any real number C and you multiply by an element in the set, it should be also in the set. So let n be an integer number, and then you have a real number c, and then c times n does not have to be an integer, right? So you can see n is 1 and my c is 0.5, and c times m is 0.5, which does not lie in the integer set. So this is not a vector space. Okay, one more silly example. Let's look at the set R2 plus. That means this is the set of all vectors in R2, meaning vectors with 2 elements, and we have a plus sign, which means all the elements are positive. That is, x1 is bigger than equals 0 and x2 is bigger than equals 0. And this cannot be a vector space because it fails the scalar multiple test. Let's say you have an x is 1 and 3, both elements are positive. And then we multiply this by any real number. Let's pick a real number that's negative. And then we perform this scalar multiple. Then we'll have a vector with elements negative and which is not in our set. Okay? Now let's look at a special element in a vector space, the 0 element. So every vector space has a 0 vector. We just write it as capital boldface 0. It's in the vector space and it has the property that is 0 plus v equals v for all v in the vector space. And then multiplying any vector by the number 0, we should obtain the 0 vector. That is number 0 times v. V is any element, any vector in the space, and you will get the 0 vector. So pay attention, that's a real number, 0, and this bold-faced 0 meaning it's the 0 vector. Let's look at the 0 element for some different vector spaces. So in R2, the 0 element will be a 2 by 2 a vector with both elements 0. And the vector space of all the matrices that has size 2 by 3, we can also find the 0 element. It would be a matrix 2 by 3 with all zeros as its elements. And look into spaces of functions. For the space of all continuous function, then the 0 function would be a function, let's call it phi, and then phi of x equals 0 for all x in R. Okay, so that's all for this part of the lecture. In the part 2, the next half of this lecture, we will go through in particular subspaces and related topics. Okay, so I hope you enjoyed this one. I'll see you soon.